This is O-Talk, a podcast covering the Ontario Hockey League. From people within the game. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the O-Talk. I'm going to redo that shit, okay? I'm going to stop doing that, man. We're just going to record without it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back.
No, you should keep that in, actually. Keep that in.
Summertime, you know what it is.
Do you want me to take over, Jordan? I can do it. It's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Alrighty. While Jordan collects himself, welcome back to the O-Talk podcast. Joined, as always, by the legends themselves, Jordan Jacklin, Frankie Benvenuti, Ottawa 67's super fan. Welcome back. It's been a busy summer for all three of us, and we're finally getting back into the swing of things. I know our brand is not really about releasing episodes consistently, but we will try our best. Obviously, busy schedules and all. We will try our best. Before we actually dive into things, before I ask the other co-hosts how they're doing, I want to extend a congratulations to Jordan Jacklin himself, switching fan bases. He recently got a job as a stat tracker with the Sarnia Sting. Congratulations. Put in a little sound effect, round of applause.
One of those really cringy ones from like Disney Channel shows.
Or yeah, one of those like
it's going
or
in
whatever. Congrats, man. That's a good role to have. Get me a Sting jersey ASAP. I'm wearing a different one as we speak, but congratulations. You're going to do great. They're hiring actually a lot of really good guys from like the OJ and all that stuff. So good to see. Good to see. How are you guys doing now?
You, Frankie?
Oh, well, I thought it'd be appropriate to start with Jordan here, considering, he's the one that was just talked about. But
yeah, man of the hour.
I am all right, I guess. Busy time still, but we're starting to get towards the end of it. I think we're like 20 days out from training camp starting right now, which is a little crazy to believe, but we're excited.
Yeah, for sure, man. We're in OHL season preview time, and even though I'm working with this thing now, I'm still going to be doing some OHL articles throughout the year, talking about general storylines, some film breakdowns. But yeah, we're just. I was actually going to ask you guys, where were you this time last year? Like what has changed maybe over the year? Like what were you doing? Like for me, like I definitely wasn't doing what I was doing with Sarnia last year, and it just feels like a lot has changed, and we're almost at the year anniversary of the pod right now.
A lot has changed. The first thing I'm going to say is the jersey collection was not nearly as big as it was at this time last year. I'm rocking a sick Cole Perfetti World Juniors jersey. This thing is beautiful. Cole, would love to have you on, man, if you're listening. Hop on anytime. I'll give you a call, give you a text, whatever. No, we're just good friends. But yeah, Jordan, that's crazy to think about that. First of all, we're at like almost the 1 year mark, but also how fast this summer and the offseason has gone by, and that we're so close to training camp and so much undecided, including my future with the Colts. No idea if I'm going back yet, boys. I'm going to get ahead of that now. I'll still be watching and cheering and occasionally going to games, even if I don't go back. But I did just want to clarify that I might not, just because there's so many other things going on in the city of Toronto that there's just too many good things to hop on. So, but I will be a very Colts fan for life. So just going to get ahead of that now. What is our first segment? I think we're going to talk about some trades first. I mean, it's been a bit of a quiet time because of the trade freeze and whatnot that just lifted, but we have some trades, a couple minor ones, but because it's the OHL and the OHL podcast, we're going to talk about them. So Jordan, tee it up, baby. What are we talking about here?
Alrighty, well, I guess we'll just go right into it. We're going to talk about some of the OHL trades that have occurred. And we'll start off with the team that made the first trade when the window opened, and that's the Niagara Ice Dogs acquiring Daniil
surprise
from Windsor for 3 draft picks.
Ice Dogs hopping on the trend wagon, whatever you want to call it again. And yeah, this is an interesting one, Frankie. I don't know if you have much insight on this. I do, so I'm going to go last.
Just in case you don't know who he is, he's a right-handed defenseman, kind of plays a more physical role, 9 points in 48 OHL games last season.
And an NHL prospect, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think this is a weird one from kind of, I mean, not from Windsor's perspective, right? Because they're just trying to get rid of a guy that they probably aren't bringing back. He's an import and an overager this season, right? So you only get 3 overagers and 2 imports, and it's not normal, not common, I guess, to use both of them as one player. They got a 15th round pick, which to me tells me that Niagara's not convinced he's coming, because they have a conditional 4th and a conditional 8th as well. So I wouldn't be shocked if he never puts on an Ice Dogs uniform.
Well, where have you heard that before, ladies and gentlemen? Not to
Yeah.
throw shade at the Ice Dogs, but where have you heard that one before?
Guess his NHL team, by the way. Who was he drafted by?
Well, I know this. I believe
I will never have a guess.
A 5th round pick by the Canadiens.
You're
not
very
mistaken.
correct. A 5th round pick in 2021.
And the reason I know that is because me being good buddies with Alex Cott, who runs a training camp out of Scotiabank Pond over the summers for a lot of hockey players in the junior landscape. Shout out, by the way. He's a great guy, phenomenal camp. He's trained some incredible people. Daniil Sobolev is actually at that camp, and I've been there a handful of times, just like working, doing content. And I've actually seen him skate with a lot of the Russian-born players that are training in Toronto and still in Canada over the summer. And the reason, Frankie, that I do think he's going to report to the Ice Dogs, as much as that's unfortunate, he's actually really good friends with a couple of their players and trains together with some Ice Dogs in the summer. Kevin Artem Frolov, who was I believe their 2nd round pick this past year. That's just something to keep an eye on. I feel like I don't think Windsor would have made this trade and just screwed him over entirely. I think there was some conversation in there. And if he does end up suiting up for the Ice Dogs, I mean, that's just good value. I mean, an NHL prospect, decent experience, and Niagara's not really going anywhere this year. So I mean, just to get him some games and get him some game action would be good. So yeah, just something to keep an eye on.
Well, Josh, one of the big reasons too I'm not convinced he's coming is I looked at Niagara's roster. They have a lot of overagers still there. And it's weird to me that they haven't gone down in numbers and they're trying to go up. It's really difficult with Niagara. If you look at their roster, you got to remember that they traded half the guys who were on it to start the year. And also the OHL websites aren't working right now very well, so I can't even pull it up if I wanted to. But yeah, it's a little, I don't know. I just find the whole situation odd, I guess.
Well, I mean, with Niagara, you kind of always just have to see what kind of plays out after, so no one can really predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I do know some of the overagers just walked completely. Like David Jesus elected to go play U Sports instead of his overage season in the OHL, and the reason I know that is just because we went to the same high school. So shout out David Jesus and Bishop Allen Academy. But it's just it is interesting. I doubt that this will be the last move that Niagara makes in the offseason. We'll have to see. Can
we set an over-under for them before the trade deadline?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, we said that 10?
I think I'm going to go
because 10 is a
on
ridiculous number of trades for an OHL team to make.
I know.
How many? They must have done more than that last year, though.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely, they did.
Well, there we go. Josh is giving some hope for Ice Dog fans here that there's a chance that Sobolev will actually.
Well, I mean, just looking at the trends, I hope that they keep him and he reports, but who knows?
I think
that's just an educated guess, of course.
Yeah,
but
I think the realistic path, Josh, you mentioned him being a 5th round pick. I wouldn't be shocked if he started in Laval, and
maybe
Niagara kept their options open. Maybe try to get down those OA numbers down to 2. They also didn't pick in the import draft, which I think is notable for kind of numerous reasons. So I think that they're fully planning on rebuilding again this year. I don't think they really took anything too drastic, in terms of finding a way to improve. So I have a feeling he'll start the year in Laval and they'll keep their options open.
And they were able to get Ryan Rubrick to sign, so they're not going to lose a top draft pick this season, and he'll actually play. Let's talk about some of the other trades. So Oshawa acquires Nikita Tarasevic for a pick, and overall he scored 16 goals, 45 points last year, and what was basically his breakout season in the O. You have to wonder what type of role he'll get with the Gents. Hoping to find any ice time at all with Callum Ritchie, but will be about a middle 6 contributor for the Gents next season.
That was an interesting one. I think Oshawa is one of those teams you got to keep an eye on, or you always got to keep an eye on that team, just because I don't think they're going to be uncompetitive for very long. They got their 2nd round pick or the import to sign. And I don't know, like that just like immediately to me, that just makes their team better. Like, before we get to the North Bay angle, like those are just a couple good moves, and obviously getting your import to sign or a high import pick to sign or to commit to your team is big. And even though they were the 8th seed last year, like they're banking on a couple of their big players to make a comeback and have strong seasons. And this is definitely one way to do it. The question now becomes, what exactly is North Bay plotting? Because they shipped off Tarasevic now and then Braden Hislop not like a little while back. So yeah, I don't know. Like you always got to keep up to date with that stuff. I don't know. Like that's just a little something's brewing. I feel like something medium to big is brewing.
Yeah, I think North Bay is probably planning on taking a step back from the big boys table, Josh. They've been really good the last 2 years. They're starting to get a little bit old, and they have a lot of assets that they can flip and turn around. I think that it's only a matter of time before we see Ty Nelson get traded at this rate. He's way too good to allow him to just sit till next year and become an overager. And then, he's the kind of guy who's probably not playing an overage season in the OHL. So what is that market going to look like for him? It's going to be heavy, and I think it's going to be a more of a trade deadline kind of acquisition the team is going to make. But I'm not expecting North Bay to be as good as they have been next season.
Well, Ty Nelson, that is fascinating.
That's a hot take. I've never heard that before, but
you think Nelson stays in North Bay?
I mean, he might be OHL Defenseman of the Year caliber next year, depending on.
And that's why I think that if they trade him, they can really set themselves up for the future.
Yeah, but it's just like he's like going into that category of almost being like, no matter how bad you are, you don't trade a guy like him. Like, it's just because I always think back to like the Brant Clark situation. We were like a couple trades away from being mid at last year. Yep. We could have easily shipped off Brant Clark for somebody, some people and picks, whatever you want to call it. I just don't see a universe where North Bay is that sad of a team where they're just like, you know what? Let's just refresh completely. Maybe if in a perfect world for like everybody but them, like maybe in a world where like none of their star players come back and only Ty Nelson is the only guy that comes back. Like if Petrov stays in Bakersfield or whatever, and Dom just leaves for Manitoba like mid-season, like in a perfect storm, maybe. But I really don't think that they're just gonna like just give up and just because that's like a waving a white flag to all the other teams in the league. It's just like if you're trading a guy of his caliber, and even though he's not on the same level as Brant Clark necessarily, I just don't see that happening.
Now because their division consists of Barrie, who I don't know how I feel about them this year. That they don't have a lot of the fire, particularly Brant Clark, right? So Barrie,
I mean, Sudbury's still back there. Like it's just to me, it's like the changing of the guard kind of.
But Sudbury's a team that I expect is going to take that step forward, and then the rest of their division, I am totally blanking on. Remind me who's there.
Oh man, it's been.
I'm so in off.
What a smooth show we got
right now.
I think Mississauga's in there. Because
who's a team who again should take that step forward. Yeah. I think a lot of what I'm getting to here is that North Bay, I don't think is just the given to set that division on fire anymore. I think if they get to the deadline and they're sitting 5, 6, 7, then it becomes way more logical to trade Ty Nelson. If they're in a situation like Barrie, where I think Barrie was in that 5 spot too, but where you like your chances to add and go again, then you do that. I think they're in a good spot to kind of sit, wait and see. And if they don't feel like they can compete with the big boys, you sell those assets off and you do exactly what Hamilton did this year and set yourself up for an amazing next season and year after that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Guelph now, because we did mention Hislop there, Josh. They do acquire overage Braden Hislop for 3 draft picks, and now they have 5 overagers on their roster. I've been kind of working their season preview. I actually had a conversation with Ryan Drury who's their play-by-play commentator on Rogers TV, kind of just to get some insight into the situation there. So they have 5 overagers. He believes Isaac Enright and Chandler Romeo could likely be on their way out because they got Braden Bowman, they got Hislop now, and then Patrick Lever as well in the net. So Hislop had 19 points in 69 games last year as a defenseman. Another kind of one of those physical defensemen. Could eat up some penalty minutes, but also just a good locker room guy. What do you think about this for Guelph?
It's kind of an intriguing move just because I never heard it put so plainly that they have so many overagers on their roster. They're kind of in tough because I think a lot of teams in the West especially are going to pretty much stay the level they were last year, roughly, give or take. And for a team like Guelph, who was kind of middle of the table last year, like that to me doesn't really move the needle much. Like if anything, I'm focusing on the potential overagers who are on their way out because the teams that need to fill an overager spot or are looking to, like Barrie would obviously be one of them, not to be biased or anything, but I'm just saying like they lost basically all their overagers, but like that would be a possibility if any team is looking to add experience on the blue line. Chandler Romeo would be a great addition to any contending team, really, if they are in need of an overager spot. So, I mean, decent problem to have, I guess, if you want to recoup assets in that trade. But yeah, that's an interesting one because, again, it goes back to the whole North Bay thing about is something bigger brewing there? Like, are they about to add a massive overager just because they just let one walk? Or like, like it gives you something to think about before the season starts, at least.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit interesting when a team brings in an overager that has been offensively unproductive. I want to say, like, obviously we know that he's a great defenseman. He comes in, he shuts things down. But when you if you get to the playoffs, your overagers need to be the 3 big players that push you forward. They are the biggest players on your team 9 times out of 10. And when you have a guy like Hislop, I think we're going to have to ask for more from him offensively this year. I don't think he's hit double-digit goals in his career yet. So, what a good season for him offensively. I'm saying like 10 goals. Like that's what ideally Guelph kind of needs to get from him offensively, and they need him to continue to be a defensive anchor. But I don't hate the pickup. Like, I think it's obviously good to be able to keep the puck out of your own net, but push comes to shove. If he can take that next step and be a number 1, then fantastic.
Well, that's going to do it for the trade discussion as we jump into some Hlinka Gretzky action. And for the second year in a row, Canada wins it, and for the 24th time in the tournament as well. So Canada winning the Hlinka Gretzky. We're going to get our thoughts on some of the players. Let's start with sort of our own teams here and some of the players represented. Let's start with Ottawa, with the highest represented out of our little bubble here with Henry Muse and Frankie Morelli.
Boys. What we saw from Muse and Morelli at this tournament was magical. Like, Josh, I see you shaking your head, but the role that they both played.
Enough is enough, man.
No, okay.
Henry Muse, 1 goal, 7 points in 5 games as well on the top pair for Canada.
Yeah. Muse was really good. And I think at this point, everybody expects Henry Muse to be really good. Frankie Morelli, though, was kind of Craig Button's darling at points, and it's easy to see. Is that
a good thing or a bad thing?
No, you know what? It was a good thing because he was highlighting him, and it was particularly the efforts in his defensive zone. Canada's penalty kill in the finals, he was a massive piece of that. Like there were a couple of shifts there where he was just dog tired and he'd get out and he'd make a big block or whatever. And when you're down 4-on-3, you kind of need that. So, Josh, I know you don't want me to, say how great these 2 guys are, but seriously, like they are. I was saying this, to one of my buddies earlier, but if there were a pairing of defensemen that play on the same team in the OHL right now that you're looking to build your franchise around, I think Henry Muse and Frankie Morelli are up there with like Sam Dickinson and Oliver Bonk.
Well, I mean, that's I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm just shaking my head because you just love to do the horns of the Ottawa guys, which I do the exact same thing.
I have to. I absolutely have to.
Yeah. I don't know. So I didn't watch a ton of the tournament just because other things were going on, but I don't know if I'd make that leap yet about the Sam Dickinson Oliver Bonk comparison. I think this season, well, that'll undoubtedly answer all those questions because at the end of the day, like, Oliver Bonk was fantastic ever since the Capital City Challenge, and his stock just rose. And Sam Dickinson was great last year, and even a minor role on the London Knights team. Like, again, all those questions are going to be answered.
And
but
that
over,
Muse Dickinson battle to be the first OHL defenseman off the board is going to be very fun to watch this year.
It's going to be interesting, and that'll only give me more of an excuse to pay attention to Ottawa, like over the years now, just because like. Yeah, well, just because. But honestly, over to the Cole Baudouin talk, like when he was named to the roster, I actually wasn't really like, I didn't really see that coming just because I knew there were a lot of talented players. And I honestly, like, he was right up there, but like, I wasn't really banking on the fact that he was going to go. I mean, but man, did his stock also rise at the tournament, I'd say. Maybe not to the extent of some other guys that we're going to talk about, like Porter Martone was incredible, but just being that the type of player that Canada needs, and even more importantly, so the type of player that Barrie needs him to be, like he just exemplified that across the board at a tournament like that. And that's what you want to see from a top OHL pick from literally just a year ago, just using his size to get to the net, using his like just massive frame to just out muscle guys in every area of the ice. Like that's what you want to see from a guy like that. And he had a very respectable rookie season, I'd say, and now with Barrie kind of switching things up and going in a bit of a different direction, like they're definitely going to rely more on someone like him to kind of carry the load offensively with, hopefully, fingers crossed, Edward Challa, who's, I hear rumblings potentially coming over. They've been working really hard on that, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, like I was just really impressed, and that's kind of the progressional growth that you kind of want to see from a guy like that. And a lot, like similar to a lot of his Canadian teammates, he definitely carried the load, and they were a great cohesive unit across the board. So I was impressed.
If Josh gets to mention the non-Canadian too, I do as well. 67's had Kimi Korbler with Switzerland, who I don't think even registered a point in this tournament, but we'll see how that goes with him. We don't know if he's coming yet or not. So,
well, the thing about that is like the imports, like the commitment reports have only started to trickle in now. Like the Jens one was like one of the first ones of the summer. So like, I didn't realize how long of a process it actually was, but just based on what I'm hearing, potentially, like there's reason to believe.
Alrighty, well, I'll highlight a couple of players, but we'll start with Porter Martone. And man, 2 goals, 5 points in this tournament. He's a player that really just shows up in the big game scenario and the big moments. And you saw his straight line speed, his skill and size, his puck protection skills as well. He's going to have a massive breakout in the OHL this season just because James Hardy's gone. A lot of players are gone. He's going to be relied upon for top level offense. And I'm excited to see what he can do for this Mississauga team that has an influx of youth coming in. They're building up towards their next competitive window. I'm fascinated to see what type of player he's going to evolve into because he really stood out in this tournament and was just really good in all situations. I want to highlight Michael Misa as well, who obviously is a big name, really did well. I mean, obviously had a 6-point game and generally outside of that, really exceeded expectations, I think, in a lot of people's eyes. Played well in all 3 zones. Definitely was better defensively than I think some maybe would have thought. Malcolm Spence scored the golden goal. I think we should highlight him a bit. 2 goals, 5 points.
It was one of the better ones I think we've seen in recent memory just for Canada and international tournament. That was nice.
And it was just like fantastic on the forecheck and shorthanded. I mean, on the penalty kill, he was dynamite, was creating chances shorthanded. So I think he deserves a shout out as well.
I was I thought it was interesting to watch Zane Parik in this tournament too. Obviously we know he's a fantastic offensive player. And I think Saginaw runs the system because I talked to Pavel Mintyukov when he came over, and Saginaw's a very liberal team with their defensemen. They do not mind them getting up in the rush. They don't mind them essentially being fourth forwards. That's going to be such an interesting thing to watch with them this year because, again, Parik is a guy who scored a ton of goals last year for a rookie. But when you're hosting a Memorial Cup, I'd like to see them keep the puck out of the net too. And I don't know. I don't want to say that Parik was exposed defensively in this tournament because I don't think he was necessarily, but I think we saw that, he has a little bit of work to do defensively.
Do you
Did
see
anyone really
Saginaw
see that
making it?
breakout
Is Saginaw
season?
going to make a big move this year because they're going to the
100%.
Memorial Cup?
Well, yeah,
100%. Ty Nelson.
No,
Oh,
no, 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 no. But I personally didn't really see even last season like Zane Parek's breakout season happening. Like I don't even think anyone saw it, to be honest.
No,
Like,
absolutely
that was kind of random. Like, honestly, honestly, Frankie, to your point, like I think it is a bit of a perfect storm in a sense, because if you put a defenseman like that in a system that Saginaw has, like you're creating a recipe for success, at least offensively. I think this season will be very interesting because obviously he's going to be, I don't know, kind of having those same expectations. And defensively, like you said, like even though this is a high scoring league and junior hockey typically is, like we've seen players get exposed defensively, like offensive defensemen especially get exposed defensively.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the rare exceptions like Brandt Clark, who's still a shutdown defenseman. You have Minchikov as steady as anyone else in the league. Like it really depends, I guess, on the player that you're kind of looking at to see exactly what they can do. But I think that's a very interesting, maybe an underrated storyline to follow is like, can someone like Zane Parekh defend just as well as he scores? Can like Bo Akey, like as much as he can quarterback the second power play unit, can he still close gaps defensively? In which I think both of them can. It'll just be a matter of if they can actually do it, prove it in a game.
yeah, for sure. And to end off this conversation, I was thinking we would do an early vibe check on our teams heading into the season. Not this isn't a season preview, but we're just going to get early vibes. There's still some finagling going on in all rosters. Let's start with you, Frankie. How's Ottawa going to do, you think, heading into the season? What's the vibe check just around the team? Really?
Finagling is one, a very interesting word. Two, there's a lot of it happening here in Ottawa still. There's a lot of wait and see. And I know the expectations around this team right now, I think, are still pretty big. Going into last year, it was said time and time again, nobody expected Ottawa to finish first. They didn't come up in any of the media polls at the start of the year. They still did it. I talked to coaches at the midseason. They said, we didn't expect to finish any higher than fourth this year, kind of thing. So this is a big year for this team. There's a lot of returning players, but at the same time, there's a lot of guys that are moving on. Guys like the expectation is Jack Mateer is going to play in the AHL. Tyler Boucher will do the same. They've lost Minchikov. They've lost Vinny Rohr. They have two brand new imports. We're still sitting at two overagers. So there's a lot left to be done, but I still think with Dave Cameron and Norm Milley, and not to mention they still have to hire another assistant coach because one of them, the guy who used to do it, is now in Rwanda as their head coach. So there's a lot to do, but expectations are still high. I think the mood is high. Everybody's really excited to report to camp. Henry Muse said, "Let's go. I cannot wait to get to camp." And I quote, that's exactly what he told me after winning a championship. So there's just excitement for everybody right now.
What about you, Josh and Barry?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same vibe as Frankie. I think it maybe a little more so, and that's maybe an understatement. I think it's a very big question mark right now for the Colts. I think, I'd go as far as saying we're at the low end of the spectrum. We're a team that doesn't even make the playoffs, and at the high end, we're a team that finishes like second. In a perfect storm, like if Anson Thornton comes back, if Edward Chala commits, if Shamar Moses pops off for a great rookie season, if Cole Baudouin continues to push forward, if Riley Patterson comes and lights up the OHL the same way he did the OJ, if all those things happen, the ceiling for this team is incredible. I mean, you're entering a new era of hockey kind of in Barrie when you lose guys like Cardwell, Vierling, and McDonald, who are all gone. When you kind of lose Brandt Clark, that kind of sends shockwaves through your organization already. It's definitely a changing of the guard, and I mean that in the biggest way possible, because you are literally shifting from guys who have been here since they were 16 to a completely new crop of guys who are just entering their first seasons, second seasons in the league. Do I think that this team has good potential? I definitely do. Edward Chala is going to be a dynamic force in the OHL. Shamar Moses hopefully lives up to the hype, and whatever else comes. The overager situation is another thing to consider because we don't even know if Anson Thornton's coming back. So it's kind of rare to have an OA goalie signed to an NHL team and we don't really know if he's going to come back or not. He could go to the coast. He could start the year in the AHL. He could come back to us right away. We really have no idea. And when I mean we have no idea, it means me and talking to my boss, we have absolutely no idea. So there are a lot of question marks. And I guess that's kind of a natural thing when things are changing so fast. And when you lose so many overagers, that's a very natural thing to have. It'll really just be only time will tell. But I do completely have faith in the coaching staff. Our new assistants from last year are still here, and they did a phenomenal job managing our guys last year, just in my experience. So I'm hoping that when all the rookies come in to camp and when hopefully our imports commit and whatnot, and all the overager questions settle down, we'll have a good group of guys who are very young, very fresh, and just ready to compete and see what happens. Because again, at the end of the day, this is kind of a bit of a restart. It's an accelerated rebuild because we kind of have all the pieces together already. It's just a matter of putting them all together and seeing how the product performs on the ice. But I am really intrigued to see Raleigh Patterson because apparently the hype around this guy is incredible. So yeah.
I think ifs are totally normal too in junior hockey, right? There's not a single team in this league right now. Even London has ifs. Nobody knows everything about their team at this point. And by the time the season starts, I still think NHL camps are going on. So we won't have all the answers until even the trade deadline. So,
speaking of London, by the way, William Moore has not officially committed to playing in the United States yet. I mean, it is believed he's going to play in the USHL, but fascinating that he has not actually officially done it yet with the window opening. So that's something to keep track of in August as well, and to see what's going to happen there. But
and for teams that don't have their first round pick signed yet, I think it's September 1st is the window to mark them as defected. So that's also coming up. I don't know who's left. But there's probably a good handful of teams out there that haven't done it yet.
Yeah, we'll get that to you next week when we come back. But I'll just give a quick update on the Mississauga Steelheads. Obviously, a bit of a different look. I mean, they played really hard after the trade deadline when they sold off the likes of Ethan Del Mastro and Luca Del Balbaluz. But this is going to be very interesting in terms of a very inexperienced goaltending tandem now. They drafted Jack Ivankovic 7th overall. That may have surprised some people, but I've been watching a lot of this 2007-born draft class this summer. And in terms of his play with the Mississauga Senators, I'm very excited to see what he can do. I think that they're going to have a great tandem. Ryerson Leaners as well went with Canada in this tournament, wasn't their main starter, but was a part of that 3-goalie tandem. And it's going to be quite fascinating. Luke Misa's obviously getting drafted this year. I have to mention him. We'll have to see if he can really take that next step. Did well after the trade deadline. Porter Martone's obviously going to be a player to watch, and it's just going to be fast. I don't expect them at this moment in time. They'll be in the bubble, but we'll have to just see how some of their younger players do. I really like their draft class from last year. Some of these players will get a chance. I really like Luke Jadruska coming out of the Toronto Marlboros. They drafted a lot of Marlies, including Kieran Butowski, and we'll see how some of them do if they do get an opportunity to play.
I might not have too many more opportunities to make fun of the Niagara Ice Dogs. So, all you have to do to make the playoffs this year is finish better than them and one other team. So, who's that other team?
When you
we don't
put it
know,
like that, I don't know who's going to be that other team that kind of falls out and doesn't really make the playoffs, but we'll see.
I'm sorry, Ice Dogs fans. I have absolutely no faith right now.
Oh, no one should, really. It's unfortunate. But again, they're going to come back stronger. I'm confident.
Hopefully.
We'll just have to see how it goes, but overall, that's going to do it. We're finally back with the O-Talk podcast, hopefully on a somewhat consistent basis. Hey, we got 2 pods out in August. I think that's not doing too bad considering it's the off season.
Boys, can I ask something before we sign off, though?
Yes, for sure.
What have you thought of Between Barber Poles?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I did watch the pod.
Gonna be honest, have not really spent my time diving into that, but I did have texted with Carter a little bit. That is definitely going to be a binge session at some point, and I'm glad, super glad, of all the hype it's getting as a fellow filmmaker myself, doing something similar in the coming season. I'm very intrigued to see what it's all about, and I'm excited to pass along my thoughts. So
Josh is in it too. If you guys didn't know this,
oh my god, are you serious?
There is a scene at the very. I showed you a screenshot of this. But there's a scene in the final home game of the season for Ottawa against Barrie where Josh is standing in the background. So
wow, That's
you
even
gotta
more reason
watch.
for me to
Pretty
watch
incredible,
it.
right?
We'll I'll update you in the coming week and see where we're at.
Okay.
Reminder, check
But-
out our last week's episode where Frankie did talk to his Ottawa 67's colleagues and Brandon Mackey, Carter. Who's the other one? Sorry. Oh, Rossi. Yeah, you talked to
Pasternak.
Rossi.
Oh,
Rossi's
that's
not gonna like
unfortunate. That's
Oh,
Rossi did
no.
say he's the
I
only
would
one who looks any good in it, by the way.
That's
So-
rough. That actually might be like my lead on Twitter when I tweet this episode out. At just
Hey,
Adam
I
and being like,
caught myself there before anybody told me. So.
holy cow. It was incredible. What a sign off. Just Brandon Carter and that other guy. The title, honestly.
He'll appreciate that. Don't worry.
That's incredible. Oh my god.
Well, I wouldn't do anything less, man. Well, we got another fun season coming up here, boys. Well, hopefully we'll have an interview next week. I'd be on the lookout for that as well. And we're back for year 2, and it's going to be better than ever.